Folks, we are still here in Ways and Means. It's 2:45 on Tuesday, May 13th. We are taking a bit more testimony on the caregiver credit part of S51 as it came to us. Hear more explicitly from Deputy Commissioner Samaroff about some of the possible implementation challenges with it. If you want to join us. Thanks.
So,
Yeah. We did indeed, but we're going to go defend our actions in a committee of conference. And so thought it would be nice to take a little more testimony on it because I know that we were told it was hard to implement, but the exact details of that became a little fuzzy to me at some point.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy to be here. Deputy Commissioner Rebecca Samaroff from the Vermont Department of Taxes. And yeah, I did do a version of this testimony for your colleagues on the Senate side when this idea was in Senate Finance initially. And yeah, I guess I'll start by saying that like such great intention with an unpaid caregiver tax credit. I'm like really resonating. It's resonating a lot for me right now, where I'm at in my own family situation, just like how much unpaid caregiving goes on in a household. But it's a really complex idea to administer as a tax program, you know, kind of like from where I sit at the department, like look empathetically at the IRS a lot with all the things they're tasked with doing, like really like administering for full policy areas from their little, you know, tax offices. And this kind of feels like something that could be delivered much more successfully, like just as like a human services program rather than as a tax program. And part of the reason why I say that is that it relies really heavily on attestation, where most of like the key information on that attestation wouldn't be something that we could verify at the department. And it's like a very generous refundable credit, which, you know, just those characteristics alone make it really attractive for fraudsters, which isn't like a part of tax administration that we love, you know, talking about and, you know, giving a lot of airtime to, but it is something that, you know, we and our staff take really seriously. And, you know, we spend a lot of attention managing fraud in the refundable credit space, especially. So, you know, whereas many of our other large refundable credits kind of relate to a paper trail that we can do verification work on, either because it's, you know, a part of a federal credit program that exists, you know, already, and we have all the IRS information, or it's related to, you know, just like the existence of your children. So we can check their social security numbers. And, you know, if we need to follow up for a birth certificate or something, depending on other characteristics of your return. For this credit design, kind of like the fundamental eligibility pieces aren't things that we would have a paper trail for. So like, is the caregiver uncompensated? We're really good at identifying compensation, but it's kind of hard to prove the absence of compensation, especially in a family system. You know, this credit program is designed, you know, for kind of like more or less family members taking care of themselves. So not clear that any compensation would be coming to folks on like a W-2, you know. And then also significantly just the amount of time spent on care has to be 20 hours a week to be eligible for this credit. And that's, again, just something that would be completely impossible for us to verify. So the bill, you know, like I think was designed as thoughtfully as it could be. You know, it contemplates that the department might need to follow up for more information. It contemplates like a doctor's note kind of proactively. But when I brought this idea to our operational divisions, you know, just to like play out administration, they're kind of baffled about what follow-up, what information they would even follow up for besides just, you know, more attestation without a paper trail. Because even like the doctor's note equivalent would be more related to the person receiving the care who's not the claimant of the credit, right? That's just the person that the caregiver is serving. So that like, I don't know, just kind of introduces an awkward element there too, of like having an attestation that shares someone's, you know, sensitive medical information to the department, but that's not even for the purposes of that person receiving a credit. It's for, you know, people that interact with them receiving a credit.
No, and something that I hadn't thought about last time we talked to you about this, which is that we have, I've seen like a lot in the news over the last year about exploitation of folks in caregiving, like of caregivers, folks receiving care from givers who were in sort of quasi-legal relationships with each other, which is really sad. And I would not want to necessarily like offer more incentive towards that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally fair concern. Yeah, and it's, this kind of like broadly falls in the category of just like places that we don't want our frontline colleagues finding themselves in, like calling back a claimant saying, like tell me about the specifics of the disability of the person that, is in your family, it's like not the kind of like bright line definitions that we want our team members, feeling a responsibility to enforce on behalf of state coffers. So I think those are kind of like the big ones, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Do you have anything to say sort of in your role as a member of the administration about the tax credit package we sent over versus the tax credit package that we received from the Senate?
I would say as a member of the administration, we're pretty enthusiastic about the House's version of this bill. Did a comprehensive job in capturing the administration's priorities, I think. And, as I've mentioned this committee before, I think that the direction that this group went with the kind of like military piece of that was really thoughtful and a fine way forward in our eyes. And a credit in that context does have a clear paper trail. So I feel like we will have all the options available to us for whatever level of review we want to do for those returns, should that become law.
Thanks.
Rick, I'm wondering about the child independent care credit.
Mhm.
And that can be used for someone's expenses so that the person who is also in charge of taking care of that individual can go to work.
Mhm.
So, I mean, this is similar in a way, except it's not that person is not going to work, that person is staying home and taking care of this person that needs the assistance.
Right, and it's like compensated care in that case, right? Because you're getting credit.
With that, right?
Yeah.
How is that program to administer? How difficult is that from the tax department? I'm just wondering about comparing the two.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And that's an example of, a credit that is recently refundable. It actually used to be non-refundable until like this committee's activities in recent years. But it's, based on a existing federal program. So we have, this great wealth of federal data to help validate, that people have the income that they say they have or spent the money that they said they spent. And I would need to brush up, and I'm happy to follow up over email about what the IRS requires for like documenting those expenses on the, paid care that you're claiming at the federal level. So, but that's like, we just use that federal work for our
I
validation.
very rarely like to talk about my personal tax situation here, but I do actually have a very clear memory of
As long
filing.
as it's your personal tax situation and not someone else.
I have a very clear memory of filing for that particular credit, and I needed to have the tax ID number of the organization that was providing the care or for the individual providing the care, and that like went into the form for the care. So if it was like a week-long summer camp even, I needed the tax ID number of that sort of summer camp.
I cannot wait until I'm in a position that I can. I'm confronting the other major challenge in Vermont right now, which is access to childcare.
You're welcome to just leave them in this room anytime.
Oh,
Children?
could we get a straw pull one?
Okay, any other questions? Okay,
Well, happy to help.
thank you very much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Folks, we are done for the day. One thing I would, before we go offline, sorry, I gave my cue a moment too early there, Saoirse. If folks, I think we're gonna have time while like committees have I have no idea what the next couple of weeks are gonna bring. And so don't want to like start big projects if some portion of us has to be out of the room for significant amounts of time. But one thing that might be useful, we actually have a huge number of reports that come to our committee every year. And one, we have not, next year, we're going to need to do a review of which reports we want to keep getting and which we don't. That's something we do every biennium. But also it's embarrassing if when we get to that list of reports, we have no idea what some of them are since they came in this year. So if folks could take the time to start looking at those reports that we haven't spent time with. My guess is that there are a few of them because we started the session off with a bang. And maybe we can like figure out a way to divide them up and do book reports or I don't know, something fun. Fun. So thanks and done for the day.
Where's the list of reports that we get?
It is on it's like one of the tabs on the website. Right, Sorchel?
Reports and resources.